In 1821, Stephen Austin, who you see right in front of you, led the first of several groups of American settlers to a fertile area along the Brazos River. Drawn by promise of inexpensive land and economic opportunity, Austin established a colony of American settlers in Tejas, or Texas. Then that was the northernmost province of the Mexican state of Coahuila. However, Austin's plans didn't work out as well as he had hoped. 12 years later, he found himself in a Mexican prison, and his new homeland was in an uproar. After his release, Austin spoke out about the impending crisis between Texas and Mexico. He says, "Texas needs peace and a local government. Its inhabitants are farmers, and they need a calm and quiet life. My efforts to serve Texas involved me in the labyrinth of Mexican politics. I was arrested and have suffered a long persecution and imprisonment. I fully hoped to have found Texas at peace and in tranquility, but regret to find it in commotion, all disorganized, all in anarchy, and threatened with immediate hostilities. Can this state of things exist without precipitating the country into a war? I think it cannot." Austin's prediction was correct. War did break out in Texas twice. First, Texans rebelled against the Mexican government, and then the United States went to war against Mexico over the boundaries of Texas. These conflicts were the climax of decades of competition over the western half of North America, a competition that involved the United States, Mexico, Native Americans, and various European nations. The end result of the competition would be the U.S. control over a huge swath of the continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific. After 300 years of Spanish rule, only a few thousand Mexican settlers had actually migrated into what is now Texas. After 1820, that changed, as Texas became an important region in Mexico and then an independent republic. In March of 1845, angered by U.S.-Texas negotiations on annexation, the Mexican government recalled its ambassador from Washington, D.C. On December 29th of 1845, Texas entered the Union, and events moved quickly toward war. President Polk believed that war with Mexico would bring not only Texas into the Union, but also New Mexico and California. So the president supported Texan claims in disputes with Mexico over the Texas-Mexico border. While Texas insisted that its southernmost border extended to the Rio Grande, Mexico maintained that the Texas border stopped at the Nueces River, about 150 miles northeast of the Rio Grande. Despite the fact that Mexico has ceased formal diplomatic relations with the U.S., Polk hoped to negotiate secretly the boundary dispute, as well as the sale of California and New Mexico. He dispatched a guy named John Slidell, a congressman from Louisiana, to negotiate the matter, but the Mexican government refused to receive Slidell. When Polk heard the news, he ordered U.S. troops into the territory between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River, and the United States claimed the territory as its own. The war begins. So in 1845, John Fremont led an American military exploration party into California, violating Mexico's territorial rights. In response, Mexican troops crossed the Rio Grande in a skirmish near Matamoros. Mexican soldiers killed about 11 U.S. soldiers, and Polk immediately called for war, and Congress approved it. In 1846, Polk ordered Colonel Stephen Kearny and his troops to march from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, to Santa Fe, New Mexico. They were met there by a New Mexican contingent that included upper-class Mexicans who wanted to join the United States. New Mexico fell to the United States without a shot. In California, a group of American settlers seized the town of Sonoma in June of 1846, hoisting a flag that featured a grizzly bear. The rebels proudly declared their independence from Mexico and proclaimed the nation the Republic of California. Kearny arrived from New Mexico and joined forces with Fremont and an American naval expedition, and the Mexican troops quickly gave way, leaving the U.S. forces in control of California as well. Meanwhile, American troops in Mexico, led by U.S. Generals Zachary Taylor and Winfield Scott, scored one military victory after another. After about a year of fighting, Mexico conceded defeat, and on February 2nd of 1848, the United States and Mexico signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Mexico agreed to the Rio Grande as the border between Texas and Mexico and ceded the New Mexico and California territories to the United States. The United States agreed to pay $15 million for the Mexican cession, which included present-day California, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, most of Arizona, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. 5 years later, President Franklin Pierce authorized James Gadsden to pay Mexico an additional $10 million for another piece of territory south of the Gila River in order to secure the southern railroad route to the Pacific Ocean. Along with the settlement of the Oregon boundary and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the Gadsden Purchase established the current borders of the contiguous 48 United States.